Hey everybody, BoatsDon'tSink. This is Connor here. Today we have the release of Sword Art Online Alicization in English, so I'm here to do my overview for it. The first thing I want to talk about, just like with Fate, Sword Art has a lot of previous support, and unlike Fate, it's not going to be as relevant this time, but I still do want to go over it a little bit before I jump into my top 10. So Sword Art has a lot of sets that have come out. They had Volume 1, Volume 2, Extra Booster 1, Extra Booster 2, a reprint set that also added like 20 new cards, and then a movie set. So there's a lot of stuff to work with here. Most of the old support focuses on the traits Avatar and Net, and these are some of the more key cards that you would have seen in them. All the new cards in Alicization, not all, but about 90% of the new cards in Alicization all focus on the FLUCC trait, so they aren't going to interact very well with these old cards. So they, it's pretty much a standalone deck, but there is some old support that's going to work with these. As you can see, a lot of these, they count your Avatar Net characters, they search for Avatar Net characters, etc. These are some of the big things you'd see in the different deck builds. There's a Yuki Xenon that would often play like Treasure and Draw. Both of these see play in the comeback-focused builds and standby-focused builds. However, you do have some like events like this. These are not trait locked, and since they're events, they're kind of just not searchable anyway. So it's not really going to hurt us to play these in Alicization builds that are FLUCC focused, since these are more generic cards. So there are still some that you're going to want to look at from the older sets. I think these are two of the more notable events that you'd have to care about. And then a couple of cards that, while they are completely designed for the Avatar Net decks, are splashable enough and impactful enough that they're worth considering sometimes anyway. Like Standby Climax or the Full of Vigor Yui stock swap. You can't really search it or anything, but it's sometimes just worth playing to have anyway. So yep, top 10 time. Since most of these are standalone. Well, actually, I say that, but our first one here, number 10, I have How About Something Sweet Asuna. So this is the fourth drop search for Sword Art. We finally have one in yellow now. Previously we had Avatar drop searches in blue and red, and then Ordinal Scale gave us an Avatar or Net drop search, which was notable, because there are a lot of cards that are only Net trait and don't have Avatar, like this drop search itself, right? And the Suguha was neat because it was also an oversize, kind of. It was a 3K, which was bigger than most of the other drop searches, and it functioned as both a drop search and sort of an oversized beater at level 0 that could plus you. This Asuna also has a secondary effect, just like the Suguha. It's not as much of an oversize, but it gives us some utility. So the first effect here is obviously drop search. Second effect is on attack, look at the top card of your deck and put it on the top of your deck or into your waiting room. So this just gives us knowledge on attack. Being yellow is pretty big. In English, we don't have the biggest card that Japan used for yellow color fix in the Avatar Net builds, which was the coin flipper here. And unfortunately, since we don't have that, it's a lot harder to fix yellow, because this was with color fix and a plussing 0. And we don't really have anything good that does that in English. So we have to make do with what we have. So cutting green drop searchers for yellow drop searchers is one of the ways that we can color fix yellow in English to get, the 3-2 assist from re-edit, or the finisher combo, or the Musashi from the new set. Any of those we're going to need yellow for. And this gives us a way to do that, so that's part of why it's on my number 10 slot. It has important deck function in the Avatar Net deck. And then also giving this top check information is pretty good in the standby builds, which also do want the yellow color fix a little bit. You can dig deeper, so if you attack, look at top card of deck, it's not a standby, you can mill it to try to dig into hitting your standbys, which is going to make that a little more consistent. Even in like the Yuki build, it lets you dig deeper to try to trigger extra treasures to loop Yuki combo multiple turns, or just hit comebacks to add more characters back to your hand and then pay it out with Yuki, right? So it's all pretty good stuff. All around, I think this card's very worth running. I think it's one of the better drop searchers, obviously. I think it's honestly better than the Suguha most of the time. At number 9, I have With Pride Cardinal. This is one of the only green double rare in the set. It's if all your characters are FLUCC light, it gains 1,000, so it does become a 3k. So it can be your sort of oversize, and it gets to do it alone and on a full board, which is pretty neat because a lot of these conditional oversizes, or like, I consider 3k an oversize really because it has other text. A lot of these conditional oversizes either they need to be alone or on a like semi-empty board, or they require a lot of characters, or a stock count that doesn't really help you with tri-fielding or whatever. But this is just as long as all of your characters. So that's if only itself is on board, or if you have 5 characters. As long as they're all FLUCC light, you're good to go. Second effect is put this into your clock. When your other FLUCC light character is frontal attacked, you may pay cost. If you do, return that character to your hand. So that's what we often refer to as the JC effect. Named after a card that, conveniently enough, is not printed in English. But we've got it on in a couple other sets in English. It's not an effect you see printed super often. These are the only 4 other titles that have it in English right now, with Persona having 2 of them, actually. And it's an effect that, unfortunately, in most of these series is just like either off trait or only hits a certain name and just isn't good enough. It does certainly see play in Batman Ninja. Would see play in Log Horizon if Log Horizon saw play in the first place. It's a very powerful effect that allows you to A, dodge reverses, B, plus, really, it's a plussing effect, because if the Cardinal and your other character were going to both die anyway, now only one of them is dying for a clock cost. So it lets you reuse things. You can play your level 1 combo alongside this, and swing in, and then when your opponent attacks your level 1 combo, you can return it to your hand. And you get to go for it again on the next turn. Just any kind of utility effects that are on play are good with this. You can drop search and then recur drop search next turn. It's all around super solid card. The other thing it does really well, just like the previous card, color fixes. Right? Since it sends itself to clock, it just immediately guarantees that you will get green. And green it's a color that does not have a lot of cards in FLUCC light in the first place, and doesn't have a lot of high quality cards. They're sort of all over the place and don't really interact very well with the rest of the set. Mainly because it's like the Integrity Knights and Cardinal, and then like Ronnie Antis, and it's just sort of like all over the place. So this lets you get green really easily to color fix into anti-damage counter. Since it's generic, we can still play it in the FLUCC light builds, or the level 3 Cardinal, if you're wanting to use that as sort of a silver bullet against specific decks as like an anti-early play sort of thing. It lets you fix into both of those very easily, as just like part of your plussing early game plan. Moving into number 8, I have Brilliant Female Knight Alice. So this is the main level 3 for Alice in the set, the main yellow level 3. It is on play heal, and then it has a climax combo with a return climax. This can be the main part of the card here. I like to draw comparisons to Xenon on this card, Last Shot Xenon, since it heals and it's a pay 2 pitch 1 finisher. But the finisher's rather different. So it's once per turn. If damage dealt by this card is cancelled and the climax is in your climax area, you can pay 2 and discard specifically a FLUCC light character. So that makes it harder to splash in. Right? Because Xenon has no trait requirements or anything, so you can actually splash Xenon into FLUCC light if you really wanted to. This is sort of doesn't like being splashed into anything. So you have to ditch a FLUCC light character, can't even be a climax. You mill 5. And then you choose X cards in your opponent's waiting room, return them to your opponent's deck, they shuffle, and then you deal X damage. And X is the number of soul triggers, the number of cards with soul trigger icons revealed among those 5 that you milled. So a card with double soul trigger icons still only counts as 1. And thankfully, this card actually pushes a 8 return trigger deck. Which both have soul triggers, so you're good on like all your climaxes having soul triggers. Because you do really want to be milling like 3 or 4 if possible with this. It's not something where you really worry as much about overshooting, like the Archer 3-2 from Heaven's Feel. It is a card where you, if you mill 4 or 5, yeah, you're dealing a large number of damage, but you also got to shuffle a lot of cards back into your opponent's deck to decompress them. So even if they cancel your burn, they're probably still decompressed for your other actual attacks off of your other characters. There's not a whole lot to really manipulate this. Unfortunately, the best way to do it is through the off-trait Comforting Moment Asuna, which is on play. You shuffle 2 characters from your waiting room back to your deck, and that lets you shuffle soul triggers back in. And thankfully, the Asuna doesn't really check for any traits, so it actually, if you're building into a high soul trigger count deck, you're playing a lot of level 2s and 3s anyway, probably, or like soul trigger level 1s even, which means this Asuna is actually going to hit on her stock condition more often. So it's possible that this is worth considering a couple copies of, just to like draw into and jam, and maybe hold on to for level 3, because you can play these to make your Alice finisher a little more powerful. But that is unfortunately just about the only way to increase your odds of hitting soul triggers off of this. And lastly, we have the anti-change bottom deck bomb, Truce Kirito, and it has a discard bond to this card. So if you want to play this as your anti-change bomb, you get to sculpt into your finisher a little more easily. I have this at 8 because I don't think it's the best finisher the set has. I'm not a huge fan of pushing return triggers. I don't think they're all that great outside of standby heavy metas, so you know, this card is what it is. The numbers aren't as good as they seem like they should be on this card. I don't have the math in this video, but you can check out the ENTCG damage calculation app on the Google Play Store. And it'll show you. These numbers aren't... Actually, I don't know if it has the function to actually do this. This is a lot of math, but trust me, we've done the math on it. It's worse than the finisher we'll get to later. Number 7, I have actually the level 1 combo that goes with this level 3 combo. And thankfully doesn't have to go with it, can go in any build. It's a 1/0 5k. On reverse, if Declaration of Independence is in your climax area, which is that other return trigger, you get to look at the top card of your deck, choose a FLUCC light from among them, reveal it, put it in your hand, put the rest on top of your deck, and then you gain until end of opponent's next turn. When this is frontal attacked, you may return this to your hand. So this is basically just Astolfo, Rider of Black. Only difference is that you don't have to reveal the top card if you miss. Right, so if you see a climax or an event and don't get to add it, your opponent doesn't know what was on top, which is sometimes relevant, I guess. You also have the option to, if it is a FLUCC-like character, you can just leave it on top. The only time I think that would come up is if you like had something that you wanted into your clock for experience on the top of your deck, and you already had like 6 or 7 hand and didn't really need it. And you just opted to let your opponent hit it into your clock. I'm not sure how often that situation ever really comes up, but yeah. So it gives you more options than Astolfo, even if they're not super relevant options. It still hides a little bit of information and stuff like that, so it's, you know, by default, just barely better than Astolfo on its face. I think Astolfo being on a plussing trigger, unfortunately, makes it a little better, but still a good card. It's a potential +2, since you get to add the top card to your deck and return it back to your hand. Being a +2 means you can play a little more loosely with the rest of the deck, which is thankfully, this deck is, you know, being just 90% of one set isn't as tight as some other big titles out there are. So being a +2 lets you just really easily go into a lot of other parts of the game. It lets you utilize a lot of your level 0 tools that don't necessarily plus you, but still want to be hitting the board and just like crashing in or whatever. It lets you utilize those a lot more freely. And it dodges reverses, obviously, so, you know, Aaron can go eat a shoe or something. Number 6, we have To the Cave in the North, Alice. This card is basically Krista, except it's on death, unfortunately. It's sort of like... It's actually more similar to Sengoku Batman here, because it also kind of mills you, technically. So it's when it goes from Stage 2 Waiting Room, you can pay 1, and then look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. You put 1 into your clock and the rest into your waiting room. And if you put 1 into your clock, then you choose a FLUCC light in your waiting room and return it to hand. So it is based off of trait. It's not level 1 or lower. So you get to add any FLUCC light, even if it's a level 3 or whatever, on a plussing 0. It's when it dies, which is a little unfortunate, but it has some upsides. It's easy yellow fix. A lot of the best cards in the set are blue. So it's easy yellow fix, because it does plus you. It lets you choose out of top 3 what goes into your clock, instead of just clocking the top card, which A, like I said, is extra mill. B, it helps you hit experience targets. Alicization does have some cards that need experience, such as the Brainstorm and the Blue Finisher. So this lets you make sure that you hit your level 3s into your clock more consistently, and hit those experience targets. It also means that you aren't going to accidentally clock a climax off of it or anything like that. You can, send that to waiting room and put something else into your clock. It's good with like all your awkward color fixing, because if you're trying to play like green in your deck and you only have very little green, you get to check top 3 to potentially clock a green off of it, which is, it's a lot more powerful in the long run. The one thing you do have to worry about, since it is Stage to Waiting Room, stock bombs, bottom deck bombs, and clock bombs are all going to mess you up. So you have to be careful about these, unfortunately. Thankfully, alongside the Cardinal 0 that I showed at number 9, the JC effect, if you field both of those and your opponent tries to swing like a bottom deck bomb into your Alice, you can just sack the Cardinal to bounce Alice back to your hand, and try again with her next turn. And try to like crash her into something else they played. So you do have good options like that with this, thankfully. That makes sort of a cool setup. But you still have to be careful for these, especially Fates running around playing either clock bombs or stock bombs. Bang Dream's getting another set in the middle of the season, so that's, always fun. AOT I think is playing stock bombs less often now, but still something to worry about. You just gotta be careful. Number 5, we have Eugeo's partner, Kirito. This is our Brainstorm. It's a pretty simple Brainstorm. It's a self-tap search Brainstorm, so, it fills that generic role. I actually really hate putting these cards on my top 10 lists, but legitimately, Alicization's a little lacking in the field of impactful cards. And this is just actually one of them. Like, there's a lot of effects in this set that let you look at top and put them somewhere, or look at top 2, rearrange, and give you information. So you, more often than not, have access to ways to turn your Brainstorm into a Brainstorm 5, Brainstorm 6, something like that. And the assist effect is not irrelevant. It only turns on at level 2 or higher, but it makes your early plays a little bigger, it makes your level 3 killers a little bigger, it makes your finishers a little bigger, right? So that's all fine, and it's a pay 1, rest itself, search Brainstorm. Searching's good, it thins your deck. It's a lot better on first deck than salvage, generally. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this. It has Eugeo in its name, which is relevant once in a blue moon. Number 4, this is a big card I know a lot of people are excited about. Glittering Osmanthus, Alice. This is basically FLUCC Light's equivalent of the Attack and Waves Asuna. It's a 2k assist, only to FLUCC Light trait, unfortunately. And it gives the following ability. During this card's battle, your opponent cannot play event cards from hand. I don't know if I like this or the memory kick more, but it has its uses. You get to beat maneuver gear, which means if you're playing a reverse combo at level 3, your opponent cannot mobility gear their Mikasa level 3 away from you. They're just stuck with it sitting in front of you and dying. They can't anti-damage counter you, they can't stock swap you, which also shuts off our blue finisher, which I think is the better one of the two. It actually, stock swap counter also shuts off the yellow finisher, so this is just good either way here. So yeah, I guess to shut off a lot of these troublesome events, you know, Compass. If you're playing against Haruhi, they can't pop your climax, question mark. So yeah, you know, good protection. It does not turn off backups, notably. So they can still play character backups, they just can't play events. I wish it turned off both, but beggars can't be choosers, right? Second effect is on play, you may choose one of your opponent's characters, return it to his or her hand. Again, I don't know why this isn't like draw one, ditch one, bounce one, or check top 3, rearrange, bounce one. It's just on play, bounce one. Big sad times. Nobody cares that this Alice is an 8500. They could have made it like a 5k and given it like 3 more lines of text. But alas, here we are. Still answers Priestess, still answers Rider, still answers Futaba. Answers a lot of others, and answers minus Sol Amelia. You actually don't even need the event card negation against Gate Scroll, because you bounce anything on their board and Gate Scroll gets turned off. Yeah. Bouncing's really relevant right now. Really strong and really relevant, and I actually think this card slots into Avatar Net decks as well, if they're playing Comeback. Only if they're playing Comeback, because it gives you another way to grab this. And Avatar Net does not have bounce on its own. So I do think this card is relevant enough to see play there. Other things, since this is a level 3 assist, obviously it's good to bring out at level 2. Alicization itself does not have a standby, and you cannot play this in the Avatar Net standby deck because it only buffs your FLUCC-like characters. But you can play standby in Alicization if you want, with just no combo, and summon this at level 2. Really good, really relevant. Part of why I wish it stopped backups so you could stop anti-change counters, but alas, we cannot do that. We can still get to stop events. We get to stop torches, move gears, stuff like that. Yeah, bringing this out at level 2 is pretty cool as a standby strategy. It's your generic, like, standby assist target. Number 3, the one no one expected to be here. The card... most people probably don't know this card exists, I'm going to be honest. But I'm pretty high on this card. So the first effect is a field encore sort of thing. When your other character with Eugeo in its card name becomes reversed in battle, if this card's on your backstage, you can sack this card to rest that character, and it bonds. It's a discard bond to fate beginning to change Eugeo. So that's the trial deck level 1 combo, actually. And I'm higher on the trial deck level 1 combo in this deck, purely because this bond exists. So you now have more copies of your level 1 combo. This lets you, you know, if you mill any off brainstorms or clock them at level 1 or anything like that, you can get them back a lot easier. So you have more copies of your level 1 combo. And when your opponent kills your level 1 combo, you can save it. So you have a really easy recursion of your level 1 combo. And spoiler alert, the blue level 3 combo is on a gate trigger, which lets you add your level 1 climax back. So you have a lot of things sort of aiding the recursion of this combo, which is powerful. Getting to slam climaxes, getting to generate card advantage is really good. Notably, this saves any card with Eugeo in its card name, not just the level 1 combo. So we also get to save our early play healer, and any various level 1s or 0s that we're playing for utility and for some reason want to save. Saving the Shimakaze Kai effect is fine. Saving this Twin Driver is fine. You have a lot of options that you can just, you know, turn this bonder into another copy of something. And I think that's really powerful, that it lets you just loop this variety of effects. Field Encores, they exist. They're usually only played alongside like early play centric decks. You see the Kanon Field Encore in Love Life Sunshine. Sometimes even the yellow one in the heavier yellow builds has a Hanamaru Field Encore that bonds the 2/2 Ruby. You see occasionally Field Encore in the Emilia minus Soul decks for ReZero, because it keeps their minus Soul around if the opponent kills it on offense. Stuff like that. So like these effects sneak in every now and then, and I think being a bond to a relevant plussing combo really pushes this one over the edge as something that deserves to make it into deck lists. At number 2, I have Night Sky Colored Hero Kirito. So this is the blue finisher for the set. It has a lot of text. Experience. At experience 6, you gain 1500. This is one of the bigger experience targets in the or not in the like standard blue yellow build, like blue yellow X build. Hitting experience 6 to make this guy an 11k all the time is pretty solid, pretty necessary, honestly. He doesn't really need it for any of his actual effects, but the power is going to help him get his reverse for sure and help him live occasionally. Second effect is on play, draw 2, discard 1, and you get to choose up to 1 Kirito's partner Eugeo in your waiting room and put it face up underneath this as a marker. And the last effect is a climax combo. So this is Kirito's partner Eugeo that he gets to marker. We climax combo with Red Rose Sword, which is the gate trigger. It's on reverse. If the climax is in play, deal 1 damage to your opponent. No other requirements, just on reverse, deal 1. Then, if there's a marker underneath this, you may pay 2, discard 2, deal 3. So it's pretty cool that you don't actually need the marker to get a little bit of value out, right? So say you're tri-fielding this, but you only have 2 Eugeos in your waiting room. You can put the markers under 2 of them, and then the third one still gets to burn 1, right? Which is still fine. In fact, I think a lot of times the way this deck's going to want to play is not dumping the resources into the burn 3 the first time, like the first go around, unless you know it's going to kill. Or like you really have to push for the kill. So it's very nice that you get to burn 1 without even paying any resources into it. Card overall is very similar to Birdcage Diva Yukina, with the whole on reverse, deal damage, deal damage. This is 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 2, which is a little worse. But we only have to pay 2 ditch 2 instead of pay 3 ditch 2. And we get to deal 1 even if we don't want to pay cost, which Yukina doesn't. This is actually a lot more versatile than Yukina and a lot less restrictive on your resources than Yukina, because you can just play 3 of these and go deal 1, deal 1, deal 1 without putting any extra resources in if you don't want to, or if you didn't get to build them throughout the game. But if you did get to build them, then you get to do extra damage on top of that, right? It's a little more restrictive in terms of deck building in that it needs you to basically play 4 copies of it and 4 copies of the Eugeo, and that you do have to have them in your waiting room to marker them. But overall, it's a very similar card in terms of like damage output and all that. And obviously, it's draw 2, ditch 1 versus heal, which is arguably better, because you get to dig for your climax, you get to dig for anti-damage, which anti-damage is one of the reasons you might not want to be dumping all your resources into this the first go-around, because if you just get to live and then swing with it a second time, it's also pretty good. We have a couple of ways in the set to sort of help guarantee this reverse. Obviously, the one is the Glittering Osmanthus Alice that I talked about. It's a 2k assist, and your opponent can't play events, so that protects you from like rest counters, it protects you from bounce counter, it protects you from anti-damage, all that stuff. And then the on-play bounce lets you get rid of minus soul stuff, it lets you get rid of back row assists that might be making your opponent too big, lets you get rid of Futaba so you can swing into your opponent's side lanes, etc. The other one I've got here is a card from Sword Art Online Volume 2 called Demonic Sword Graham. This is an event that got really popular in Japan for like 5 minutes and then completely fell off the radar, because I think Japan stopped playing Alicization builds. But choose one of your characters, it gains 3k for turn. That pumps this guy up to 14.5, or 14 rather. Climax makes him 15. So he's really big. He's going to reverse something. Also reads your opponent cannot play event cards and backup from hand until end of turn in all 3 lanes. That stops literally everything that could have any way of stopping your combo. Except for like Persona 5 Futaba. But it's really good at securing your combo here. And I think the card's not a wasted slot as just something you're dedicating here, because you can, if you draw extra copies, you can jam it at level 2, so your opponent can't play anti-change counters, and you get to protect your early plays. Stuff like that. Red's a little weird to color fix, but it's an option. It's an option to protect your combo here. And I think resolving this combo efficiently is this deck's biggest win condition. Kirito is how you kill your opponent in this deck every time. Regardless of whether you do it over like 2 turns by going slow 1 turn, anti-damage, and then go in the 2nd turn or what, Kirito is how you kill your opponent with this deck. His numbers, I'm sure everyone knows how good Yukina is, and how popular she is. Even though Mocha's out there, like, Yukina kills people. This also kills people, for sure. And we also have Stock Swap. This is part of the reason that you can play Stock Swap in this deck. Stock Swap into the Sky is a lot of cards from hand, but it's also you get to draw 2, ditch 1 to dig for it, and you can really blow someone out with it. Number 1, we have Kirito's partner Eugeo. I have this card at number 1 for a few reasons. 1, it tutors a climax. That's always very high on my list. 2, it's an early play healer, which I'm a big fan of, but it's also an early play healer that is very crucial to the main finishing combo of this deck. So this card plays like 3 or 4 different roles, and they're all very good. It also has Eugeo in its name, which means your 1-0 bond can field encore it, which has incredible applications. So let's just go through this card, right? So it's a 2 or fewer climax early play, easy. During your turn, plus 500 for each of your other FLUCC-like characters, easy. It attacks for 11. On play, heal, easy, good. Climax combo, experience. Put this card into your waiting room. If the Kirito finisher is in your level, you choose one of the gate climax from your waiting room and return it to your hand. Guess what? We always have climax combo with this now. Every time. Every single time. It's basically the Simon and Nia or Batwing, right? These both sacked 3 to add their climax back, and were part of their like respective decks' Sunder combos. This only has to sack itself instead of sacking 3, but it does have the experience requirement. Otherwise, very similar, especially similar to the Batwing since it heals, right? And it like needs to be in waiting room for part of your combo. Since the Batwing wanted to let you play it, heal, sack it, get your climax back, and then play your Sunder dude and marker it under it for the Sunder combo. This is very much the same. You want to play this, heal, sack it, get your climax, and then play your Kirito and marker it after you've sacked it. The difference here is that this only has to sack itself, not 3, so it's a lot easier on your resources. Given sacking 3 in Batman's fine because you want your board empty for Sunder. But this is good because you can just play it, sack it, get your climax, and go. With the Field Encore, this is really good because you can early play this at level 2, get your heal, and start beating in with it at level 2. And if your opponent kills it, you get to use the Field Encore to save it. And then you get to sack it on your next turn anyway to go get the climax. So it means that even if you play it early, you can still get the value out of it without having to play additional copies to the board. If you don't have the resources like to be playing them or don't need to heal, right? So that's super good, super good. It's very comparable to these early plays. These are both 2 or fewer climax early plays that heal and attack for 11.5, which is 500 bigger, but they can't grab climaxes. This guy tutors climaxes. He tutors a climax. That's so good. I love it. It's your finisher climax even. This card is... might be too high on this card, but this card's really good. It's just like everything around this finisher package and level 1 combo really has a lot of synergy. That's why I really like it. I know a lot of other people are like really like the Alice level 1 combo because it can +2, and I think it's good. But I think the Eugeo name synergy here, where everything sort of works together between the bond and the level 1 combo going together, and the bond being able to save this, and this just playing so nicely into such a powerful level 3 combo, I think it's all really good. And since you need experience 6, right, you can just jam 4 of this guy, jam 4 of your finisher. Now you have cantrips and like healers and everything, and they're all just like experience targets. So that's, I don't know, I think everything plays together really nicely in this deck in a way that I really like. Also, in case that wasn't enough, we have this Kirito 2-1. It's an assist, level 3 or higher characters in front of it gain 2k. Guess what? Spoiler alert, this Eugeo is a level 3 or higher character. It's also on play discard 1 bond. You might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of synergy you got going on there. And then you realize, this discards the bond out of waiting room, but your early play conditions 2 or fewer climaxes. That's, those two things don't go together too well, unfortunately. Big unfortunate. However, worth noting, if you're ever on the timeline where you get to play the Kirito bond to the Eugeo and then like brainstorm into refresh and jam the Eugeo, like, that's pretty sick. But I think in general there's just better back rows to be playing than the Kirito, unfortunately. So yeah, here's my top 10. You can see there's sort of like 2 different shells here that they go into, but overall, I think they're actually pretty good cards, right? Like I said, I don't like putting the brainstorms on here because they're not interesting, right? But they're still good. The rest of these cards are pretty interesting and do cool things. Even like the Alice being a Krista clone it's the only Krista clone that does this exact thing, like where you get to choose what goes into your clock in English. So they all have cool applications. Any of these cards can go into decks. Obviously, they're my top 10. They're good cards. Onto tier placement, right? Sword Art Online jumps from A+ tier to A+ tier. We're just now Cute Grill instead of Kirito. Yeah, just changing the icon, to keep it updated, etc. I think the FLUCC Light build, I'm not going to leave this on my tier list for future videos because it's Sword Art. I don't want to put multiple copies of each series on here for different builds because that starts to get really cluttered really quickly. I kind of just want to put like where I think the ceiling of that title is. And I think the ceiling of Sword Art is still Avatar Net, up in A+ tier up here. I think most of the FLUCC Light trait decks fit into A tier. I think they're a little worse. Or I think they're worse than like Konosuba and Fate. I think they're not much worse than Goblin Slayer, just in different ways. And they might be better than Gun Gale. Probably better than Gun Gale. So solidly A tier on the FLUCC Light builds. If for those of you that are specifically here for FLUCC Light. But that's not going to stay on my future tier lists. But yeah, thank you for watching. We'll have some deck builds next time. Hopefully beginning of next week, into the weekend. Check me out. You're obviously on YouTube right now. Check me out on Twitter. Global community on Facebook. Card Games Discord. Lots of cool people there. We're starting to get Tabletop Simulator growing, so hopefully we'll have more people playing on there soon. I'll have videos for that. Check me out on TCG Player. Well, not me, but check my store out on TCG Player, Card Addicts. There will be a link to that in the description, or you can be one of those guys that just pauses the video and types what I've got on the screen if you really want to, or if I forget to put a link in the description. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to have Alicization cards due to an issue in our ordering, but we will have JoJo's and Fujimi in the future, so check us out on there. We also still have not a lot, but we have Goblin Slayer stuff up still. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.